The first time they appeared, people all over Earth felt a mix of wonder and fear. They were massive ships, moving with a kind of silent grace that made the night sky seem smaller. Satellites picked them up before anyone could even see them clearly, and the news spread like wildfire. Some called it the dawn of a new era, others whispered about the end of humanity. There was no middle ground. At first, the world tried to understand them. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, analyzing the strange signals that came from the fleet. The sounds were unlike anything humans had ever heard, patterns that didn't match any language or code they knew. They weren't angry. Not exactly, but there was a tone of command, almost as if the aliens expected humanity to obey without question. Governments convened emergency meetings, and soon the United Earth Council was formed. The council brought together leaders, scientists, and strategists from every corner of the globe. For once, the divisions that had haunted humanity for centuries faded into the background. It didn't matter what nation you came from or what language you spoke. Survival became the only priority. Messages were sent, carefully composed by teams of diplomats and linguists. They spoke of friendship, of trade, of shared knowledge. But the responses were clear, cold, and impossible to ignore. The aliens demanded obedience. They spoke of their superiority, calling humans weak, unpredictable, and primitive. It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. The words reached the ears of people everywhere, carried by news channels, online forums, and emergency broadcasts. For the first time in history, the entire world felt the weight of a single, united fear. Most of the public reacted with panic. Some tried to prepare for evacuation, stockpiling supplies and building shelters. Others simply froze, staring at the skies as if sheer will could make the ships disappear. But among the leaders and the military, a quiet decision was forming. Humanity would not bow. They would not beg for mercy. The threat was real, but so was the resolve that had carried humans through wars, disasters, and plagues. In the early days, there was debate. Some suggested opening the doors to diplomacy, further, sending humans to meet the aliens face to face. Scientists argued that it could be a trap, that humanity would not survive a misstep. Others believed that talking was the only option, that the universe might still have room for peace. But every attempt to negotiate only revealed the aliens' intentions more clearly. They did not come seeking conversation. They came demanding control, and if humanity resisted, they would strike. The first attack was unexpected, but devastating. A research station orbiting near one of Jupiter's moons exploded in a blinding flash. Hundreds of scientists and crew were lost before anyone could even react. At first, people could not believe it. Satellites captured images of the station's destruction, but it seemed unreal. Governments convened again, this time with faces pale and hands trembling. The council understood what the aliens wanted: fear, submission, total obedience. And they also understood that showing fear would only bring more destruction. In the days that followed, humanity began to organize itself in ways that had never happened before. Old conflicts were set aside. Countries that had once been rivals shared intelligence, technology, and resources. Engineers who had competed for decades now worked together to repair and upgrade old spacecraft. Scientists repurposed mining equipment and satellites into weapons and defense systems. The scale of human cooperation was unprecedented, fueled by fear but driven by determination. Every night, people looked to the sky and wondered who they were really dealing with. The ships seemed alive in their silence, massive structures that could crush Earth if they chose. Yet behind the fear, there was a spark of something else: pride. Humanity had survived ice ages, world wars, famines, and plagues. They had built civilizations from dust and stone. Could a fleet of alien ships really break their spirit? News anchors and journalists became messengers of both fear and hope. They told stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, scientists working tirelessly to decode alien signals, engineers braving dangerous conditions in space to test new defenses, pilots training for missions they might never return from. Children listened and learned the meaning of courage. Adults found themselves inspired by strangers they would never meet. united by a shared struggle. For the first time, humanity felt like a single organism, connected not by politics or geography, but by the instinct to survive. Even in ordinary towns and cities, life changed. Factories that once built cars or electronics now built satellites and weapons. Universities that had focused on philosophy or art now trained students in astrophysics and space engineering. The streets were filled with volunteers, people delivering supplies, building shelters, and teaching skills to anyone willing to learn. Fear became action. Panic became preparation. Humanity had no choice but to rise, and rise they did. As the weeks passed, small victories began to appear. Human scientists decoded a fragment of the alien language, enough to understand basic threats and warnings. Engineers repaired old spacecraft to serve as scouts and defense vessels. Every breakthrough was celebrated like a festival, not because it was easy, but because it meant humanity had not yet been broken, and while the aliens watched silently from above, perhaps confident in their superiority, Earth prepared quietly but fiercely. By the end of the first month, humanity had changed. People were more cautious, yes, but also braver than ever. Ordinary. Workers had become technicians. Students had become strategists. The world had learned quickly that the cost of failure was extinction, and the cost of courage might be survival. Everyone understood that they could not expect mercy from the stars. If they wanted to live, they would have to fight, not tomorrow, not later, but soon. And when that fight came, they would face it with everything they had, because humanity had never been the kind to kneel. In the shadows of the alien fleet, a new determination grew. The ships above may have been silent, but humans were loud in their resolve. The first part of this story was not about battle yet, not about victory or defeat. It was about the awakening of a species that had always dreamed, explored, and survived. Now they were ready to defend themselves, to prove that they would not bow, and that if conflict was demanded, humanity would answer. The silence of the alien ships was met by a new sound, the quiet, steady hum of human determination, building into a force that no one, not even the most powerful fleet in the universe, could ignore. And in every home, every lab, every spacecraft, orbiting Earth, one thought persisted. They demanded conflict. Humanity would answer, but not with mercy. The first attack had shaken humanity to its core. The research station near Jupiter had been a symbol of progress, a place where humans pushed the limits of science and exploration. Yet, in a single moment, it was reduced to a fiery grave. Loss of life. Over 200 brilliant minds was felt across the globe. People could hardly believe it. News broadcasts showed the station's remains drifting in space, silent and broken, and it felt like a warning aimed directly at humanity's heart. Leaders and military commanders held urgent meetings. The United Earth Council gathered once more, this time with a new urgency, a new understanding. The aliens did not want peace. Every message, every act, every explosion confirmed it. They wanted control, submission, obedience. And if humanity refused, they would strike again. The council had to decide quickly. They could not wait for another attack. The question was no longer whether humans could survive. They had to plan how they would fight back. For weeks, debates filled council halls and broadcasted chambers. Some argued for more negotiation, for finding a way to appeal to the alien logic, to reason with them. Others said that hope for diplomacy had ended the moment the station exploded. Waiting, they warned, would only give the aliens time to destroy more lives. Arguments became heated. One point became clear to everyone. Humanity could no longer afford hesitation. Finally, the council made a historic decision. For the first time in recorded history, humanity would speak with a single, unified voice. Every nation, every faction, every group agreed to a coordinated planetary defense strategy. It was called Project Resolve. It was not just a military plan, it was a declaration. Humanity would fight back, not out of hatred, but out of necessity. Every human life, every dream, every hope was at stake. They would not kneel. Shipyards around the world began to work like never before. Old warships that had long been decommissioned were brought back to life. Engineers worked in shifts around the clock, repairing damage and upgrading systems with whatever technology was available. Satellites once used for communication were turned into early warning systems and tactical weapons platforms. Even mining lasers were modified for combat. Every tool, every machine, every scrap of metal became a weapon in humanity's arsenal. But it wasn't just about machines, it was about people. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, scientists, everyone had a role. Training centers operated day and night. Volunteers joined in droves, learning to repair spacecraft, operate weapons, and understand alien strategies. Ordinary civilians found themselves learning extraordinary skills. Mechanics became engineers. Students became tacticians. Teachers taught navigation and survival techniques. The world was mobilized in a way that no one had ever imagined. Fear had turned into purpose. Families, too, were affected. Parents explained to their children the dangers of the sky, not to scare them, but to prepare them. Children asked questions, sometimes difficult ones, about life and death, about courage and fear. The conversations were honest, human, and filled with hope. Communities supported each other. People shared resources, food, and shelter. No one knew what the coming days would hold, but everyone knew that standing together was the only way to survive. As Project Resolve progressed, small victories began to appear. Engineers repaired old fighter ships, turning them into nimble scouts, capable of moving through asteroid belts undetected. Scientists successfully decoded parts of the alien signals, revealing basic patterns and weaknesses. Intelligence teams learned to anticipate alien movements, giving humans a small but crucial advantage. Every success, no matter how small, was celebrated, because each one meant humanity had a better chance to survive. The military preparations were unlike anything in history. Pilots trained for missions beyond the edges of the solar system. Ships were equipped with shields and weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Coordinated strategies were written, rewritten, and rehearsed, with simulations of every possible scenario. Commanders worked tirelessly to ensure that humans could respond to alien attacks in seconds. The sense of urgency was constant. Every hour counted. Every decision could mean life or death for millions. Despite the preparations, tension remained high. The skies were watched constantly. Radar stations, satellites, and space telescopes monitored every movement. Civilians went about their lives, but always with a sense of vigilance. Schools, workplaces, and public spaces had emergency drills. People learned to move quickly, to act without panic. Communities organized local watch teams. Humanity was learning to survive in a world where danger could arrive from above at any moment. Amid all this preparation, humanity did not lose its humanity. Acts of kindness and bravery multiplied. Volunteers delivered supplies to the families of those lost at the station. Scientists shared breakthroughs freely, without concern for recognition or profit. Strangers helped strangers, building a network of support stronger than any weapon. Courage was not just in the ships or weapons. It was in the people, in their willingness to face the unknown and protect each other. Then one morning, the alien fleet moved again. They came closer to the inner planets, sending messages that were no longer cryptic but direct and threatening. The world watched in silence, fear tempered by determination. The Council had prepared for this moment. Project Resolve was activated. Every ship, every weapon, every trained pilot was ready. Humanity's first coordinated response was about to begin. It began with a warning strike, small but deliberate. Scouts were sent to observe alien movements. Communication satellites were positioned to intercept and decode signals. Defensive measures were tested in real conditions. Human forces were ready to react instantly. The aliens, confident in their strength, may not have expected such preparation. And humanity, for the first time, understood the weight of its own power. The first coordinated human action did not destroy ships or strike blows, but it sent a message. It showed that humans were organized, capable, and prepared to defend themselves. From the shadows of the solar system, scouts and satellites relayed movement patterns, tracked alien ships, and prepared for future attacks. Every system functioned like clockwork, the product of countless hours of work and sacrifice. The aliens were not aware yet of the full scale of human coordination. Back on Earth, the people followed the events with tense anticipation. Families huddled around screens, communities gathered in halls to watch updates, and soldiers sent messages of reassurance to those they left behind. Hope and fear coexisted, creating a strange but powerful energy. Humanity had learned that survival was not passive. It required action, courage, and unity. And now they were no longer waiting for the next attack. They were preparing to answer it. By the end of the second part of this story, humanity had transformed. From a species divided by borders and disagreements, it became one organism, united by a shared threat. Project Resolve was more than a plan. It was proof that humans would not surrender. They had been challenged by a force that seemed unstoppable, and yet instead of despair, they found resilience. They had been forced into a corner, and in that pressure they found strength. The first strike of the aliens had been meant to intimidate. The destruction of the station near Jupiter was meant to make humans feel powerless. But it had the opposite effect. Humans learned quickly that fear could be turned into preparation, grief into action. Every loss became motivation, every challenge an opportunity. And as they watched the alien fleet silently hovering at the edge of the inner planets, humans knew something that no alien ship could measure. Determination cannot be destroyed. Project Resolve had begun. The world was united. Ships were repaired, weapons were ready, and the people were awake to the reality that survival would demand everything they had. And though the battle had not yet begun in full, one truth was already clear to every human being who had witnessed the first attack. When the aliens struck, humanity would be ready. When the time came, they would not only defend themselves, they would show the universe what it meant to answer without mercy. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Just weeks after the first alien attack, humanity had begun to transform. Streets that once buzzed with ordinary life now hummed with purpose. Factories that had built consumer goods switched to producing spacecraft parts, energy cores, and defense systems. Every resource, every skill, every ounce of effort was directed toward one goal: survival. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, and the edge had revealed what they were capable of. Old rivalries dissolved. Countries that had spent decades competing for power now collaborated. Engineers who once competed in global contests now shared every secret, every design, and every idea freely. Laboratories that had been rivals opened their doors to each other. Universities trained their students in war strategy, space navigation, and advanced technology. Even those who had never imagined themselves as soldiers found themselves preparing for the fight ahead. The world was united in a way that no war, no disaster had ever achieved before. At the heart of this transformation were the people. Ordinary. Men and women became extraordinary out of necessity. Factory workers learned to operate complex machinery that could build spacecraft. Scientists worked tirelessly to adapt old technology into weapons and defenses. Pilots trained for maneuvers that pushed the limits of human endurance. Students volunteered in labs and workshops, learning skills that might save lives tomorrow. Everyone understood that the cost of failure was not personal embarrassment or political defeat. It was the extinction of humanity itself. For many, the change was frightening. People worried about leaving their homes, their families, their familiar lives behind. But fear was quickly replaced by determination. Communities organized themselves into support networks. Neighborhoods shared supplies and knowledge. People taught each other survival skills, first aid, and communication methods that might be needed in the chaos to come. Parents trained their children to respond quickly in emergencies. Teachers adapted lessons to include practical survival strategies. Humanity's strength was no longer just in machines. It was in people, in every individual willing to rise to the challenge. At the same time, the military mobilized on an unprecedented scale. Decommissioned ships were repaired and upgraded. Mining vessels were converted into mobile weapons platforms. Satellites became tools of surveillance and defense. Engineers developed new shield technologies to protect ships and stations in orbit. Weapons that had once been theoretical were tested in simulations and adjusted for real combat. Training programs expanded to include civilians who volunteered for service. By the end of the preparation phase, humanity had created a fleet capable of defending Earth and challenging the alien forces, even if only in small numbers. One of the most remarkable changes was the speed at which innovation occurred. Humans had always been creative, but now that creativity was focused, sharpened by necessity. A team of engineers in Europe developed a propulsion system that allowed ships to maneuver faster than previously possible. Scientists in Asia created energy shields capable of withstanding weapons fire from the alien fleet for longer periods. Teams in North and South America worked on weapon systems designed to exploit weaknesses in alien technology, discovered through painstaking study of signals and intercepted communications. Every breakthrough, no matter how small, became a reason for hope and pride. The world outside the laboratories and shipyards was transformed as well. Streets were quieter, but there was a sense of purpose in every movement. People shared food, water, and medical supplies. Communities set up emergency centers, training people to respond to crises. Even artists and writers found ways to contribute, producing communications that boosted morale, reminded people of what they were fighting for, and helped maintain the humanity that might be easily lost in the face of overwhelming danger. The world became a single organism, moving with a shared heartbeat toward survival. Yet the preparation was not easy. Many nights were filled with exhaustion, tension, and fear. Families worried about those working on spacecraft or in research stations. Communities feared the next attack. Governments faced the constant pressure of allocating resources and making critical decisions that could mean life or death. Mistakes were not tolerated because the cost of error was too high. And yet through this pressure, humanity became stronger. Every challenge, every setback, every obstacle was met with determination, ingenuity, and collaboration. As the weeks passed, the first signs of a coordinated human defense began to take shape. Fleets were stationed in strategic positions around the inner planets. Defense satellites were operational, scanning the skies for the alien fleet. Emergency evacuation plans were prepared for every major city. Pilots and soldiers trained for months in simulations that replicated every possible alien attack pattern. And through it all, the message was clear. Humanity would not submit. Humanity would not beg. Humanity would not run. If conflict was demanded, they would answer with everything they had. The social impact of this mobilization was as significant as the military one. People became more connected than ever before. Strangers helped strangers without expecting anything in return. Communities pooled knowledge, skills, and resources. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, often in shifts lasting days, caring for the wounded or preparing for potential attacks. Volunteers drove supplies across dangerous territories. Even children learned the importance of preparation, responsibility, and teamwork. Humanity was discovering that courage was not just the domain of soldiers. It belonged to everyone willing to act. In the midst of this transformation, there were moments of reflection. People thought about the first attack, about the lives lost, and about the alien presence looming in space. They remembered the explosion of the research station and the silence that followed, a silence that seemed to mock humanity. Yet they also remembered how they had responded, not with despair, but with determination. That moment had forced humanity to confront its vulnerabilities, and in doing so, it had awakened a strength that had lain dormant for centuries. Every new technology, every new ship, and every trained pilot became a symbol of resilience. Humanity had learned quickly that survival depended not only on intelligence or firepower, but on adaptability, courage, and unity. They had transformed fear into action, grief into motivation, and uncertainty into preparation. It was a transformation that went beyond military strategy. It was the awakening of a species fully aware of its fragility and fully capable of overcoming it. By the end of this phase, humanity was ready. The fleets were prepared. The weapons were tested. The people were trained and vigilant. Scientists and engineers continued to innovate. Every resource, every individual, every community contributed to the collective effort. The world was no longer a collection of nations or borders. It was a single entity, united by necessity and determination. And although the aliens still loomed, their threat was now met with preparation, strength, and resolve. This period, the forging of humanity in the fires of preparation, would be remembered long after the conflict. It was not about the battles that had yet to come, but about what humanity had become while waiting for them. It was about courage, ingenuity, collaboration, and the refusal to be intimidated by a superior force. Humanity had been challenged, and in response it had risen higher than ever before. The story of this time is not about victory nor about defeat. It is about awakening, about the extraordinary capabilities of ordinary humans when faced with an unimaginable threat. It is about a species that, when cornered, did not falter, did not despair, and did not surrender. They prepared, they trained, and they built the foundation for what was to come. They had been tested, and they were ready to answer the call. And in every heart, every mind, and every workshop, one thought grew stronger with each passing day. The aliens demanded conflict, and humanity would answer, but they would do so without mercy. The first true battle was nothing like humanity had imagined. For months they had prepared, trained, and built fleets, but no one could know exactly what it would be like to face the alien armada in space. When the ships appeared near the inner planets, the world held its breath. Every eye was on the sky, every mind aware that the fight would determine the survival of the species. The alien ships moved with precision, their formation perfect, almost too perfect. They were massive, imposing, and silent, casting shadows across the planets below. Satellites picked up every movement, and human commanders worked tirelessly to interpret what they saw. The aliens' confidence was clear. They had not expected humanity to be ready, not in such numbers, not with such coordination. Human fleets, smaller and less powerful in comparison, waited in the shadows of asteroid belts, behind moons, and in hidden orbital positions. The first strike was not a frontal assault. It was a test, a probe to see how humanity would react. Scouts moved quickly, relaying information to the command centers on Earth. Pilots gripped their controls, hearts pounding, knowing that one wrong move could mean death. Engineers and scientists on the ground monitored every system, ready to adjust shields, weapons, and communications at a moment's notice. The battle began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Small human ships darted between asteroids using speed and stealth to avoid detection. They struck alien supply drones, disabling them and retreating before the aliens could respond. It was a dangerous dance, requiring every ounce of skill and courage the pilots had. Communications crackled with urgency. Commands shouted and relayed, calculations made in seconds. It was chaos and order all at once, a testament to human determination and ingenuity. Meanwhile, engineers worked furiously to improve defenses in real time. Shield generators were reinforced, weapon systems recalibrated, and targeting software updated with every encounter. On Earth, civilians followed the updates with tense anticipation. Families gathered around screens, communities watched together, and every success, no matter how small, brought hope. Humanity was not just fighting for survival. It was proving that they could respond, adapt, and overcome. The first significant clash came when a group of human fighters ambushed a small alien reconnaissance vessel near the asteroid belt. Using a combination of speed, stealth, and clever maneuvering, the pilots disabled the ship's engines and communications. It was a small victory, but monumental in significance. For the first time, humanity had directly engaged the alien fleet and come out alive. The news spread instantly, boosting morale across Earth and showing that the aliens were not invincible. As the days passed, the battles grew more intense. Alien ships tested human defenses, firing energy beams and attempting to intercept fleets. Each attack was met with careful countermeasures. Human shields held longer than expected, weapons found their marks, and coordinated strategies disrupted alien formations. Every encounter was a learning experience, teaching humanity more about the enemy and themselves. Mistakes were costly, but they became lessons that improved tactics and readiness. The human fleet relied heavily on creativity. Conventional tactics alone could not overcome superior alien technology. Pilots learned to use asteroid fields, solar flares, and gravitational pulls as cover, moving unpredictably to strike at the aliens. Engineers developed new weapons that could exploit weaknesses observed in alien systems. Scientists decoded fragments of alien communication, predicting attacks and adjusting defenses accordingly. Every human action was a combination of courage, intelligence, and adaptability. On Earth, the people followed every development with anxious attention. Schools and workplaces adjusted schedules to provide updates to citizens. Communities held discussions about the battles, and morale campaigns reminded people that every life saved, every ship preserved, was part of a larger effort. The fear was still present, but it was tempered by pride, courage, and hope. Humanity was standing together, united in a way that no individual, no nation, and no alien fleet could easily break. The turning point came during an ambush near one of Saturn's moons. The aliens, confident in their superiority, moved in a formation they thought humans could not penetrate. But human strategists had anticipated it. Pilots attacked from multiple angles, using the terrain of the moons and asteroids as shields. Weapons fired in synchronized precision, disabling several alien ships before they could react. The battle was brutal, chaotic, and dangerous, but the outcome was clear. Humanity had proven they could fight back, and even inflict serious damage. Every human pilot, every engineer, and every commander involved felt the weight of the moment. They were ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Fear was present, but it was replaced by determination and focus. They understood that each success, no matter how small, was a step toward survival. And while losses were inevitable, each life lost became a motivation to improve tactics, strengthen defenses, and protect those who remained. The battle stretched for weeks, with skirmishes erupting across space. Human fleets adapted rapidly. They learned to predict alien maneuvers, to exploit weaknesses, and to communicate instantly across vast distances. Civilians on Earth became part of the effort as well, analyzing data, creating simulations, and offering insights. The fight was not limited to the sky. It was a global effort, a testament to humanity's ability to work together under pressure. What made these victories remarkable was the human spirit behind them. The pilots were not superhumans. Engineers were not machines. Scientists were not infallible. They were ordinary people pushed to their limits, learning to trust each other, to take risks, and to act with courage and intelligence. Every victory, every tactical success was proof that determination, creativity, and unity could overcome even a superior enemy. As the first major phase of the battle ended, the alien fleet began to retreat, at least temporarily. It was not surrender, but a recognition that humanity was not an easy target. The silence that followed was tense, filled with anticipation. Scientists continued to analyze data from the encounters, engineers worked on repairs and improvements, and pilots trained for the next inevitable strike. Humanity had survived the first real test, and they had done so with skill, courage, and resilience. On Earth, the impact of the battle was profound. People mourned the lost, celebrated the victories, and prepared for what was next. Communities became tighter, united not only by fear but by hope. Families understood that the fight was far from over, but they also understood that humanity had the strength to face it. The first battle had been brutal, but it had also revealed the extraordinary capabilities of ordinary people working together. In space, the human fleet was stronger, smarter, and more coordinated than ever. They had learned from every encounter, adapted their strategies, and tested new technologies in real conditions. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity's ingenuity, courage, and determination. What had begun as a defensive effort was now becoming an organized, strategic resistance, capable of standing against even the most advanced adversaries. By the end of this stage, Humanity had proven something fundamental. They were not to be intimidated. The aliens had demanded conflict, expecting submission. But humanity had responded in kind, not recklessly, not blindly, but with skill, strategy, and courage. They had shown that while they may be smaller, they were far from weak. They were adaptable, intelligent, and united in purpose. And in every corner of the planet, every ship in orbit, and every command center, one thought grew stronger. Humans would not kneel, would not beg, and would not surrender. If conflict was demanded, they would answer, not with hesitation, not with fear, but without mercy. The war had reached a critical stage. Humanity had survived the first real battles, learned the alien strategies, and adapted with remarkable speed. But the aliens were relentless. They had observed humans carefully, testing defenses, probing weaknesses, and trying to intimidate with their immense power. The threat to Earth was growing, and the time for preparation was over. Humanity had to strike decisively, or risk losing everything. In secret, scientists and engineers had been working on a new weapon for months. It was not a weapon born of cruelty, but of necessity. Every design, every calculation, and every test had been done to protect humanity and turn the tide of the conflict. It was a ship unlike any humans had built before, massive and heavily armed, but also built with intelligence and speed in mind. It was called the Resolute. The name reflected the determination of the entire species, a promise that they would not back down, and that they would answer the alien threat with full force. The Resolute was deployed with care. Its launch was coordinated with fleets across the solar system. Smaller ships acted as scouts and protectors, ensuring that the giant ship could reach its position without interference. Engineers monitored every system, pilots rehearsed every maneuver, and command centers tracked every potential threat. The excitement and tension were overwhelming. People on Earth, watching from a distance, felt a mixture of hope and fear. The Resolute represented humanity's first real opportunity to turn the tide of the war. But it was also a massive gamble. As the Resolute approached the alien fleet, silence fell over the human command centers. The alien ships had been monitoring human movements, but they did not expect such a concentrated, carefully prepared strike. For the first time, humanity was not reacting. They were initiating action. Every crew member on the Resolute understood the weight of their mission. Every pilot, engineer, and technician knew that the outcome of this encounter could decide the fate of the planet. The first engagement began with precision. Human scouts harassed alien supply vessels, drawing attention away from the main ship. The Resolute moved through the shadows of asteroids and behind the glare of distant planets, using stealth and strategy to approach the alien fleet. On board, the crew worked in perfect coordination. Weapons systems were armed, shields calibrated, and communications maintained with every human fleet across the solar system. Every moment was tense, every decision critical. Then came the moment that would be remembered for generations. The Resolute's main weapon, a massive energy cannon designed to pierce alien shields, fired for the first time. A single shot struck one of the largest alien cruisers, obliterating it instantly. The explosion lit the darkness of space, sending debris tumbling across the void. It was a shocking display of power, one that shocked the aliens themselves. They had underestimated humans. They had assumed fear would slow them, hesitation would weaken them, and chaos would control them. But humans had answered with precision, planning, and courage. The battle that followed was intense and chaotic. Alien ships moved to retaliate, but humans were ready. Fleet coordination, intelligence from previous encounters, and innovative strategies allowed humans to strike from unexpected angles. Smaller ships darted between asteroids, attacking weak points in the alien formation. Energy shields deflected attacks that had once seemed unstoppable. Every move was calculated, every action a demonstration of humanity's ingenuity and determination. On Earth, people followed the battle with a mix of awe and terror. Every report from the front lines, every image of the Resolute in action, and every update from pilots in combat reminded humanity of what was at stake. Families clung to each other, communities held their breath, and entire nations watched as ordinary humans did extraordinary things. Pilots risked their lives to strike at alien ships. Engineers worked tirelessly to keep weapons and shields operational. Scientists monitored alien signals, predicting movements and providing critical data. Every human was part of the effort, whether in space or on the planet, and every contribution mattered. The alien fleet was thrown into confusion. They had never encountered a species that combined courage, ingenuity, and cooperation in such a way. Human tactics were unpredictable, flexible, and bold. Every attack seemed to be part of a larger plan, yet executed with precision and adaptability. The aliens began to realize that this fight would not be easy. Humanity, small and seemingly fragile, was capable of facing a superior enemy without fear. Amid the chaos, the human fleet gained the upper hand. The Resolute led the charge, targeting alien command ships and supply vessels with incredible accuracy. Smaller fleets coordinated attacks that exploited weaknesses in alien formations. Every ship, from the smallest fighter to the largest cruiser, had a role to play. Humanity was no longer merely defending. They were striking decisively, proving that they could challenge even the most advanced alien technology. One of the most remarkable aspects of the battle was human creativity. Pilots used gravitational pulls from planets and moons to accelerate attacks, making maneuvers that were impossible in traditional combat. Engineers developed makeshift weapons from existing technology, creating unexpected effects that confounded alien systems. Scientists analyzed every fragment of communication, every movement, every pattern, allowing humans to predict attacks and counter them before they occurred. Humanity's ingenuity was the real weapon. Combined with courage and unity, the human fleet paid a price. Ships were lost, brave crews sacrificed, and lives were gone forever. Every loss was felt deeply by those left behind, both in space and on Earth. But each loss also fueled determination. Humans learned from every mistake, improved their tactics, and ensured that every sacrifice contributed to the greater effort. The cost of war was high, but humanity understood that survival demanded everything they had. As the battle raged, the turning point became clear. Alien forces, expecting submission, faced a coordinated, relentless human response. The Resolute, supported by its fleet, continued to strike key targets with devastating effectiveness. Alien ships were destroyed, supply lines disrupted, and morale shaken. The humans had not just survived, they had dominated, using strategy, courage, and technology to even the odds against a seemingly superior foe. The end of the engagement left a lasting impact. Debris from alien ships floated in space, a stark reminder of the battle's intensity. Humans had proven that they were capable of more than defense. They could take initiative, strike with precision, and achieve results that seemed impossible only months before. Earth celebrated cautiously, mourning the lost while recognizing the strength that had carried them through. Humanity had taken the first major step toward victory, but the war was not over. In the aftermath, humans learned more about themselves than they ever had before. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and a superior enemy and had emerged stronger. Coordination, courage, and ingenuity had won the day. The Resolute had become a symbol of hope and determination, not just for those in space, but for everyone on Earth. The battle was proof that humans could rise to any challenge, no matter how overwhelming. Communities on Earth rebuilt, repaired, and prepared for what was next. Pilots trained, engineers innovated, and scientists analyzed every fragment of alien technology they could recover. Every person, whether in orbit or on the planet, contributed to the effort. Humanity had been tested and had proven its strength, and the message to the universe was clear. Humans would not bow, would not beg, and would not surrender. If conflict was demanded, they would answer without mercy. The stage was now set for the final phase of the conflict. Humanity had faced the alien fleet, survived, and struck back with unprecedented skill and courage. The world had witnessed the extraordinary capabilities of ordinary humans when united by purpose and necessity. The next steps would be critical, but one thing was certain. The universe had learned that humans were not to be underestimated, and across every battlefield, every control room, and every home on Earth, The thought was the same, unspoken but universally understood. They demanded conflict, and humanity had answered. Not with fear, not with hesitation, but with everything they had without mercy. The war had ended, or at least the worst of it. The alien fleet had retreated, leaving the solar system littered with debris from destroyed ships and shattered satellites. Silence filled the void, where there had once been chaos. On Earth, people looked to the skies with a mixture of relief and sorrow. The victories had come at a great cost. Thousands of lives were lost, countless ships destroyed, and communities forever changed. But humanity had survived. The first days after the battle were a mixture of celebration and mourning. People gathered in public squares, churches, community centers, and even schoolyards to honor those who had given their lives. Memorials were held for pilots, engineers, scientists, and ordinary citizens who had contributed in every way imaginable. Each name remembered was a life that had mattered, a story of courage, sacrifice, and dedication. It was a time to grieve, but also a time to reflect on what humanity had achieved together. Cities that had once been quiet now buzzed with activity again. Factories, once repurposed for war, began to shift back to producing everyday goods. Yet the experience had changed everything. Humanity had learned how to work together on an unprecedented scale, and that cooperation could not be easily forgotten. Countries that had been rivals now shared technology, knowledge, and culture in ways that had once seemed impossible. The war had forced unity, and even in peace that unity lingered. In orbit, fleets and stations remained vigilant. Humanity knew that the aliens might return. The solar system was scarred, but humans were stronger, smarter, and better prepared than ever before. Ships were repaired and upgraded, lessons from the battles carefully studied, and strategies refined. Engineers continued to innovate, scientists continued to study alien technology, and pilots trained constantly. Survival had taught humans that vigilance was the cost of freedom, and no one was willing to forget that lesson. Yet, humanity also remembered how far it had come. The war had forced people to push boundaries, to act with courage in ways they had never imagined. Ordinary workers had become engineers, students had become tacticians, and entire communities had rallied to protect one another. People discovered inner strength and resilience they didn't know they had. Fear had been turned into action and despair into determination. Humanity had learned that they were stronger together than apart, and that unity could accomplish the impossible. The alien retreat left questions unanswered. Why had they attacked? Why had they assumed humanity would submit? Scientists and leaders studied every piece of communication, every fragment of ship technology, searching for answers. Some speculated that the aliens had misjudged humans entirely, underestimating courage, ingenuity, and the will to survive. Others believed the retreat was strategic, that the aliens would return someday, perhaps with greater force. But one fact remained clear: humans were no longer the hunted. They were survivors, defenders, and a species that had earned respect through courage and determination. The social impact of the war was profound. Families who had lost loved ones found comfort in communities that had supported them through the crisis. Children grew up hearing stories of bravery, sacrifice, and unity. Schools incorporated lessons from the war, not just about technology or strategy, but about human resilience, cooperation, and courage. People shared stories of neighbors, helping neighbors, volunteers risking their lives to save others, and strangers working together for a common cause. Humanity had learned that courage was not limited to the battlefield. It lived in every act of kindness, bravery, and commitment. Governments faced the challenge of rebuilding and maintaining peace while remaining prepared. The war had taught a harsh lesson. Safety could not be assumed, and preparation was a necessity. Resources were allocated not only for rebuilding, but also for maintaining a defensive presence in space. Fleets were reorganized, strategies refined, and alliances strengthened. Humanity had seen the threat that existed beyond their planet, and they were determined not to be caught unprepared again. On Earth, the environment itself bore the scars of the conflict. Satellites had fallen, space debris drifted dangerously, close to Earth. and infrastructure had been repurposed or damaged in the effort to fight the aliens. Yet, reconstruction was swift, driven by the same determination that had fueled humanity during the conflict. Communities worked together to repair, rebuild, and improve systems. What had been damaged was replaced with innovation. What had been lost was remembered and honored, ensuring that every step forward was also a step toward preserving the lessons of the past. Perhaps the most important legacy of the war was the realization of human potential. Humanity had faced a force that seemed impossible to overcome, yet ordinary humans had risen to extraordinary challenges. Pilots had executed maneuvers that defied logic, engineers had built weapons and defenses that had saved millions, and ordinary citizens had contributed in countless ways. Courage, ingenuity, and cooperation had triumphed over fear and destruction. Humanity had not only survived, they had grown stronger. In the quiet moments after the battle, people reflected on the cost of their victory. The universe had tested them, and humanity had passed the test, but the test had come with a price. Families grieved, nations mourned, and communities remembered. Monuments and memorials were erected to honor the fallen. Museums displayed relics of the conflict, ships, weapons, and personal items, so that future generations would understand the struggle and the courage that had defined it. Humanity had endured not through luck, not through strength alone, but through resilience, intelligence, and unwavering determination. Even in space, vigilance remained. Pilots patrolled the outer edges of the solar system, and scouts monitored distant stars for any sign of returning threats. Scientists continued to analyze alien technology, searching for weaknesses, understanding new possibilities, and preparing for the future. Humanity had learned that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous, but also full of opportunity, and they would face it together, ready for whatever came next. The story of humanity's response to the alien threat spread across the globe. People spoke of courage, sacrifice, and unity. They shared lessons learned, not just about technology or strategy, but about the strength that comes from working together. Young people grew up inspired, understanding that their actions, no matter how small, could matter. Ordinary humans had achieved extraordinary things. Humanity had faced a challenge that could have ended everything and had emerged stronger, united, and proud. And as the years passed, the memory of the war remained alive. It was a story told in schools, remembered in homes, and commemorated in ceremonies. The names of the brave, both those in space and those on Earth, were never forgotten. Humanity had learned a fundamental truth: kindness and courage could coexist, with strength and determination. Compassion and resilience were not mutually exclusive. Humans could be builders, explorers, and creators, but when threatened, they could answer decisively without hesitation, without mercy. The universe had learned something important too. The aliens had assumed that humanity would submit, that they could intimidate a species with threats and displays of power. They had been wrong. Humans had shown that survival was more than instinct. It was strategy, courage, and unity. Humanity had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with, capable of responding to any threat, and capable of defending everything they held dear. In the end, humanity stood taller than ever before. The war had taken much, but it had given even more. It had revealed the courage within ordinary people, the power of collaboration, and the potential that exists when a species unites for survival. The alien fleet had retreated, leaving Earth to rebuild and reflect. But the story of courage, ingenuity, and determination would endure forever. And across every city, every space station, and every heart, the message was clear. The aliens demanded conflict, and humanity answered. Not with fear, not with hesitation, not with weakness, but with everything they had without mercy. The war was over, but the legacy remained. Humanity had learned its own strength, the value of unity, and the power of courage in the face of unimaginable odds. They had survived the impossible, and in doing so, had set a standard for all species that might ever underestimate them. Humanity had proven, once and for all, that while they desired peace, they would never hesitate to defend themselves.